President Trump and Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi declaring the golden age of their alliance while inking deals that deflect rising threats from Beijing. And the president announces new multi-billion-dollar investments. Hurricane Melissa is expected to bring catastrophe as it makes landfall in Jamaica. The Category 5 storm is set to be the worst to hit the island since records began. We have the updates. Expect air travel delays amid the government shutdown. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy delivers a message on behalf of air traffic controllers. The United States continues cracking down on drug traffickers trying to smuggle narcotics. The military hit 4 more boats, killing 14 alleged drug traffickers. President Trump appeals his criminal conviction in the New York State business records case. It involved payments to a woman claiming she and Trump had an affair.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today's Tuesday, October 28th. I'm Stephanie Cox. The United States continues cracking down on drug traffickers trying to smuggle narcotics to the U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says the military hit 4 boats, killing a total of 14 alleged drug traffickers. Hegseth said the Department of War carried out 3 lethal kinetic strikes on 4 vessels operated by designated terrorist organizations trafficking narcotics in the Eastern Pacific. 1 person survived the strikes. According to Hegseth, Mexican authorities assumed responsibility for coordinating his rescue. It's not clear if that person will stay in Mexican custody or be handed over to the U.S. The action marks an increase in the pace of the strikes, which began in early September. It's the first time multiple strikes were announced in a single day. And President Trump met with business leaders in Japan today. Around 20 companies from Japan and the United States are exploring projects under Tokyo's pledge to invest $490 billion in America. Here's Trump and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick giving updates on the deals made during the trip.
It's going to be contributing $10 billion building auto plants throughout the United States. And they are doing it, I think, because of the November 5th election and because of the tariffs. And I was just authorized to make that statement. And we have another company that's going to be contributing at least $10 billion, and I'll give you that name later. We'll keep it a little. They wanted to do it very quietly, and that's okay with me. It could be quiet or not quiet. It's still about, I think, $18 billion. So we're very close to that.
Now you're at 518. Now you're at 518.
If you think about it. So thank you all very much. Great honor. You're great business people, my friends. Almost all of you are friends.
These deals are driven by the Japanese Strategic Investment Initiative, which was created by your tariff policy and by your historic trade agreement with Japan. So that was the underlying reason that we were able to get all these deals done today. So the commitments ensure the economic and national security of the United States of America. We're going to be developing energy. We're going to be developing nuclear, semiconductors, and strengthening the entire domestic supply chain.
Big names like SoftBank, Mitsubishi Electric, and Hitachi are among those expressing interest in fields from energy and AI infrastructure to critical minerals. Westinghouse and GE Vernova are weighing nuclear and power projects worth up to $100 billion, with major Japanese partners potentially involved. Other companies, including Panasonic, Carrier, Murata, TDK, and Fujikura, could join in building the next wave of U.S.-Japan industrial cooperation. Here's the president speaking at a reception with Japanese and U.S. business leaders at the U.S. Embassy.
In so many countries, they invest in the United States, but we've never had anything quite like what's happening. And I think it's going to get better. I can say it now. So we have over $17 trillion of investment in 8 months. And I think by the time we go to the 12-month period, we'll have over $20 or $21 trillion invested or to be invested, very importantly. I mean, the money's coming in, and a lot of it's commitments that are incredible. Tim Cook is doing, I think, like $600 or $650 billion, right? Think of it. You've done more than the entire group here. I'll be meeting with President Xi the day after tomorrow. I'm going to a wonderful place where I think a lot of you may be going. Xi, as you probably heard, I'd be surprised if anybody didn't hear. That's a big meeting, and I think it's going to work out very well, actually. I think it's going to be great for everybody.
Trump also highlighted fast-track approvals and what he described as record regulation cuts, allowing energy and manufacturing projects to move from proposal to construction much more quickly. He cited new nuclear, oil, and gas developments, rapid growth in AI and chip production, and a national push to restore America as a manufacturing and energy powerhouse. The president called the U.S.-Japan partnership a cornerstone of mutual prosperity and Pacific security.
And we have a lot more money coming in. And again, I mentioned SoftBank, but JERA, JCB, Toyota, Mitsubishi, Hitachi, Honda, they're all coming into the United States. We have a lot of car plants opening up because of tariffs. They don't want to pay tariffs. And they come and frankly, Japan is sponsoring many of them because that way you don't have to pay the tariffs. Without the tariffs, I mean, tariffs are about national security. And we're making a lot of money.
Trump vowed there would be shocking numbers when the promised car plants start opening up. The president went on to discuss prices, saying energy prices, gasoline prices, and food prices are down. Trump says an exception is beef, which he promised to get under control. In a strong show of force, just 2 days before President Trump's high-stakes meeting with Xi Jinping, the U.S. and Japan asserting also their military alliance in front of 6,000 American troops in Yokosuka. And the president signs yet another agreement to break China's monopoly on rare earth resources. NTD's Mario Tsu brings us the latest from Tokyo.
Born out of the ashes of a terrible war, our bond has grown over 8 decades into the beautiful friendship that we have. It's a foundation of peace and security in the Pacific.
Aboard the USS George Washington in Yokosuka, President Trump and Japan's newly elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi declare a golden age for their alliance.
This woman is a winner. So now I have a really great respect for the new and incredible Prime Minister. And I have to say this, the first female Prime Minister in the history of Japan.
Takaichi vows to take what she calls the world's greatest alliance to even greater heights.
We are facing an unprecedented severe security environment. Peace cannot be preserved by words alone, only when there is an unwavering determination and action.
Takaichi has long fought to raise Japan's defense budget and rewrite its pacifist constitution, a stance that's in alignment with President Trump's peace through strength posture.
No enemy will ever even dream of threatening America's Navy. And if they do, the American sailor stands ready to crush them and sink them and wreck them and blast them into oblivion, right?
Japan is committed to fundamentally reinforce its defense capabilities, and Japan is ready to contribute even more proactively to peace and stability of the region.
And in a move that puts steel behind that shared vision, President Trump announces the first U.S. missiles for Japan's F-45s land this week ahead of schedule.
I just want to tell Madam Prime Minister they've been waiting for those missiles, and we got them here right away.
He also announces plans for Toyota to invest over $10 billion in the U.S.
So that's Toyota, so go out and buy a Toyota.
This comes as President Trump and Takaichi sign a rare earths framework, with both nations seeking to reduce China's monopoly in the sector, a resource that Beijing has weaponized in trade wars. Meanwhile, in soft diplomacy, Prime Minister Takaichi gifts 250 flowering cherry trees to Washington, D.C. in celebration of America's 250th birthday. And for President Trump personally, a golf bag signed by major winner Hideki Matsuyama, plus the putter of Shinzo Abe, the late Prime Minister and President Trump's close ally, which Abe used during President Trump's Japan visit. On Wednesday, President Trump jets off for South Korea, where he'll be making remarks at APEC and speaking with South Korea's president. And then on Thursday, we have that highly anticipated meeting between President Trump and CCP leader Xi Jinping. Reporting from Tokyo, Mario Tsu, NTD News.
Mario Tsu, thank you. Next, Beijing is trying to pitch itself as an alternative to what it calls U.S. protectionism. The regime signed an expanded free trade pact with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. That's ahead of a planned meeting between President Trump and Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping this week. Here's more.
China signed an upgraded free trade deal with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, on Tuesday, The 11-member bloc is China's biggest trading partner, with bilateral trade totaling $771 billion last year. Beijing is seeking to strengthen its ties with ASEAN to counter hefty import tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. Beijing's Commerce Ministry said the upgraded agreement includes sections on digital, the green economy, and other new industries. It was signed at the Summit of ASEAN Leaders, which Trump also attended on Sunday at the start of a trip through Asia. Talks on the upgraded deal began in November 2022 and ended in May this year, just after Trump's tariff offensive kicked off. Beijing has been seeking to position itself as a more open economy, even as it courts criticism for expanding export restrictions on rare earths and other critical minerals. The US and China extended a trade truce this weekend in Kuala Lumpur. Negotiators hashed out an agreement for Trump and Xi Jinping to decide on later this week when they meet in Seoul.
President Trump is heading into a high-stakes meeting with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping in South Korea on Thursday. Markets are rallying as both sides near a deal to boost trade and pause China's rare earth restrictions that have threatened global supply chains. Chinese negotiators say the U.S. position has been tough. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent outlined a list that suggested the Chinese side had agreed to everything Trump raised. On the table, reliable rare earth exports, China's soybean boycott, fentanyl trafficking, and Russian oil sales. Washington had called on Beijing multiple times to exert pressure on Moscow to end the war in Ukraine. It has raised the possibility of curbing purchases of Russian energy to do so. Trump says he'll also press for the release of Hong Kong activist Jimmy Lai and discuss the Taiwan issue. The president also said he wants a, quote, deal on everything. Taiwan says its relationship with the United States is stable and that there is close cooperation between the two sides. The country's foreign minister made the remarks today ahead of President Trump's upcoming meeting this week with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping.
Because our Taiwan-U.S. relations are very stable. No matter whether on security, trade and business and other areas, there is close cooperation. We're a member of APEC and have a representative to participate in the APEC summit.
Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te said today that Israel is a model for the island nation to learn from in strengthening its defenses. He cited the biblical story of David versus Goliath on the need to stand up to authoritarianism. Taiwan has been a strong backer of Israel since the 2023 Hamas-led attack on that country. Lai says Jewish people have suffered constant persecution throughout their history. He added that appeasement has never been the way to stop authoritarian governments. Lai says the concept of peace through strength is a maxim that Israeli, U.S., and Taiwanese societies have had for years. And Hurricane Melissa is bearing down on Jamaica. The director of the National Hurricane Center gave an update earlier today. He said it will bring catastrophic winds, flash flooding, and storm surge in the next several hours.
Just after 11 a.m. on Tuesday, with very dangerous scenarios now starting to play out in the next few hours. Wind gusts over 200 miles per hour in some of those high mountains here along the south coast. Everybody in Jamaica needs to be in their safe place, stay indoors.
The island nation hasn't taken a direct hit from a hurricane in over a decade, and never from one stronger than Category 4 in recorded history. The National Hurricane Center expects the storm to hit Jamaica today, then cross eastern Cuba and move over the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos by tomorrow. More than 240,000 customers in Jamaica are currently without power as of this morning. And the hurricane is expected to stay well offshore of the United States, bringing only rough surf and minor coastal flooding to the East Coast. Meanwhile, President Trump has appealed his criminal conviction in the New York State case related to 34 counts of falsifying business records. A New York jury concluded that the falsification was intended to cover up payments made through his attorney to a former adult film actress who claimed they had an affair. Trump has denied the affair. The president's attorney again argued that the alleged conduct has never been found to violate any New York law, and asserted that the DA fabricated a felony charge by stacking time-barred misdemeanors. The prosecution argued that Trump falsified the business records to influence the 2016 election. Trump's attorney is also trying to move the case into federal court. They say that since Trump was accused of influencing a federal election. The case should be heard by a federal judge. We'll keep you updated there. And the House Oversight Committee is calling for Attorney General Pam Bondi to take a closer look at the presidential pardons the Biden White House issued via AutoPen. According to a letter and 93-page report sent by the Republican-led committee, there was a, quote, cover-up of the president's cognitive decline. The bottom line, they're alleging Biden didn't make all of those clemency decisions on his own. Biden has disputed that publicly, saying those claims against him are lies. During his time in office, Biden issued more than 4,200 pardons and commutations, the most for any previous president. Analysts expect Democratic officials and lawmakers to oppose the report as partisan. The Senate today failing for the 13th time to advance the House-passed government spending bill. So, as I mentioned, the government is still shut down. Lawmakers voted 54 to 45, mostly along party lines. That's, as we mentioned, the government is still shut down for 28 days now. More than 5,500 flights have been delayed as a result of this shutdown. Air traffic controllers staying home from work. House Speaker Mike Johnson saying Republicans have ideas to fix health care, but they need bipartisan cooperation to move forward.
We're throwing good money at a bad, broken system, and so it needs real reforms. The reason it was never appropriate or never possible to be resolved on a simple CR, stopgap funding measure, is because it's very complicated to fix. But Republicans have a long list of ideas. And I am not going to go in a back room with Chuck Schumer, like he keeps demanding, with 4 people and make this decision. I will not do it. It's not appropriate. It's not right. It's too complicated for that.
Meanwhile, the Department of Agriculture has warned that SNAP food benefits could soon lapse. Speaker Johnson says that contingency funds can't legally be tapped for food stamps because it's a congressionally appropriated finite source of money set aside for emergencies. Some Democrats have accused Republicans of not wanting to negotiate, saying the two sides could probably come up with a solution quickly if they did. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said negotiations are pointless because he believes that Democrats have dug in on their positions. Expect air travel disruptions. The FAA is reporting air traffic controllers' staffing shortages. This comes as controllers missed their first full paychecks today since the start of the government shutdown.
Oftentimes, I'm asked, is the airspace safe? Is it safe to fly? And I would tell you that, yes, it's as safe today as it was 2 months ago. It's safe because we have great men and women who run our facilities that if they don't have the right staffing levels or if there's distractions in towers, they will slow down the landings and departures in different airports across the country. And what that means for the American people is that means more delays, or that means more cancellations.
Sean Duffy said 44% of the delays on Sunday and 24% yesterday were because of staffing shortages. He said many controllers are struggling to make ends meet, and they urged the government to reopen. Atlanta and Newark International airports were both short-staffed with air traffic controllers this morning. Not every staffing shortage results in a delay, as controllers can reroute flights. But sometimes there's no choice but to slow planes down to maintain safety. Controllers are considered essential staff and must work during the shutdown despite not being paid. A court hearing in Chicago on the use of tear gas during protests. Top Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino will be appearing in person today. U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis earlier this month issued an order limiting how federal agents can use certain crowd control tactics. She barred federal agents from using tear gas when they are not under threat and without warnings. This came following a legal challenge by protesters. Bovino is a Border Patrol operations commander leading immigration enforcement efforts in Chicago. The judge summoned him after a video appeared to show him deploying tear gas. Protesters submitted the video saying Bovino violated the judge's earlier court order. In the video, Bovino appeared to toss a canister of gas at protesters who had gathered last Thursday in a residential neighborhood. The DHS argued that Bovino was under threat and protesters threw a rock at him. Amazon will reduce its corporate workforce by about 14,000 people. Today's announcement marks a major shakeup driven in part by advances in artificial intelligence. Tech companies are increasingly using the technology to write code for their software. They're also adopting AI to automate routine tasks to save costs and cut reliance on people. Amazon had about 1.5 million full-time and part-time employees at the end of last year. Its corporate workforce includes roughly 350,000 employees. Over the last 2 years, the company has been cutting jobs across divisions, including books, devices, and its Wondery podcast business. The company said it will also offer most affected workers 90 days to look for a new role internally and prioritize those candidates. And Apple has joined an exclusive club. It just became only the third publicly traded company to surpass $4 trillion in market value. It crossed the threshold during trading today. Apple shares have been surging lately because it appears the iPhone 17 is selling better than previous models. Apple joins fellow tech giants Nvidia and Microsoft in the $4 trillion club. Both reached that milestone earlier this year. Apple's new record comes in a blockbuster year for tech stocks, as the artificial intelligence frenzy has sent tech giants soaring to new heights. And turning now to the New York City mayoral race, which has gained a lot of interest as Election Day approaches. NTD's Paul Graney joined Dave Martin at the Data Hub to break down the three-man race. Take a look.
We're joined at the Data Hub by election data analyst Dave Martin. Dave, great to see you.
And great to see you, Paul.
Dave, the banner race this year is the New York City mayoral race. A crowded field even after Adams dropped out. What are polls telling us right now?
Let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at a recent one just from earlier this month. This is a Gotham AAR people of likely voters earlier this month. Here we go. Choice for mayor of New York City, number one in the lead, Zohran Mamdani at 43%. Now, right behind him, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo coming in at 29%. Now, Cuomo was a Democrat running as an independent after Mamdani beat him in the June Democrat primary. In third place, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate, at 19.5%. And then we've got 8.5% undecided or other voters. Now, if we rewind 4 years to the 2021 race for mayor, here we go.
Wow.
Here we go. Current mayor Eric Adams won this, getting 67.5%, 2/3 of the vote here. Curtis Sliwa came in at second at 28%. Now, Adams, though, he was running as a re-election. He was an independent, but he dropped out about a month ago. He was actually polling behind Curtis Sliwa in fourth place. So he dropped out. So now we just have a three-man race here.
But Dave, this is significant. 68, give or take, to 27. But Eric Adams is a much different candidate than the front-runner Zohran Mamdani. There are many people, he's a Democratic Socialist. There are many people calling for either Sliwa or Cuomo to drop out of the race in order to prevent Mamdani from winning. What would happen if either Sliwa or Cuomo dropped out?
Well, that's a very good question, Paul. Let's actually take a look, because clearly they are taking votes from each other in this poll. This is the same poll here. This is the Gotham poll, Gotham AAR people of likely voters. If Andrew Cuomo dropped out, all of a sudden you'd see a Zohran Mamdani. He gets about a 3-point bump here, up to about 47% if Cuomo drops out. But the real winner here is going to be Curtis Sliwa. He gets up to 32%. That's a 12-point bump if Cuomo drops out. And actually, the undecided actually gets the biggest jump here, up to 22%. There's a 14-point bump right here. Now, if you look at these numbers, you say, all right, well, it is mathematically possible then for Sliwa, if he gets a majority of these undecideds, that he can possibly overtake Mamdani. But a closer look at this 22% shows that about 74%, about 3/4 of them are actually Democrats. So it seems highly unlikely that they would actually vote for a Republican. Now, if we look at the inverse, what if Sliwa dropped out here? You're going to say choice for mayor. Zohran Mamdani will give...
Much closer.
Yeah, much closer. Mamdani only goes up 1 point if Sliwa comes out. Now, Cuomo, though, is the big winner in this case.
And I'm going to point out, that's within the margin of error, Dave. That's within the margin of error.
You got it exactly right, just within. He goes up, what, 14 points here? I'm sorry, 12 points. Just to 3.9% behind here. There. Undecideds is about a 6-point jump. And yes, as you pointed out, he is just within the margin of error right here. So it's very clear Cuomo and Sliwa are definitely taking votes from each other.
Well, there are calls for this to be the final race. Sliwa says he's not going to do it. Looking at him, he's probably not going to do it, but this is interesting. Now, does anything from the presidential race last year, any indication on how Trump performed and how the sentiment towards Republicans or more towards conservative values may affect this race coming up next week?
Yeah, I mean, that generally is a good indicator. If you look last year, Kamala Harris took 55, she took New York State winning 55%, but specifically in New York City, if you look here, these are the 5 boroughs of New York City added up. She took 69% of the vote, while Trump took 30. Harris took 4 of the 5 boroughs there, with Staten Island the only one voting for Trump. No surprise, though, largely Democratic city would vote for Kamala Harris there. So that's one indicator, anyway, from the last year, the presidential results.
It's a blue city, Dave.
It's a blue city.
There's no way around it. You're going to be here all week, right?
I'm going to be here all week, Paul.
That's great.
Dave Martin there with Paul Graney. Next, an AI company's latest findings show that Chinese-owned TikTok seems to be promoting content related to Zohran Mamdani. So how did they find out about it? The company analyzed millions of TikTok videos through a program built on TikTok's leaked documents. NTD's Flora Hua has more.
The leaked documents exist on GitHub, where engineers share open source codes and programs. And these codes are part of TikTok's training materials for newly hired software engineers. The tech firm Spring AI built a computer model with these codes and wanted to test out how TikTok decides on which content to promote from the way people engage with it. The AI researchers had tested millions of videos with this model, and they noticed that some content was getting unexplained promotion. One type stood out: the videos supporting Mamdani, which man is described as socialist or even communist due to his extreme political views. Meanwhile, the researchers found videos backing the moderate Democratic candidate Andrew Cuomo were being quietly pushed to the sidelines. TikTok rejected the accusation, calling the study not based on any form of reality. This is not the first time the short video platform has faced criticism of political bias. Israeli officials have accused TikTok of routinely taking down their content. 2 years ago, several conservative TikTok content creators also experienced a similar situation. They said the platform had deleted much of their content or forced them to switch to new accounts. Last year, in congressional hearings, TikTok was accused of pushing Beijing's narratives on U.S. soil, including the cover-up of human rights abuses in Xinjiang or Tibet. CCP officials are also taking executive roles in TikTok's parent company, ByteDance. Now the Trump administration is pushing China to divest TikTok to American companies. But Beijing has already classified TikTok's algorithm as its controlled export technology, which Americans cannot own but only use it with China's license. This raises concerns of how the app could shape Americans' way of thinking, especially their political views. Flora Hua, NTD News.
Great report there from Flora Hua. Election Day 2025 is coming up in just 1 week. Election Day 2025. NTD's Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer will bring you our live special coverage of all the biggest races from New York's mayoral election to the governor races in New Jersey and Virginia. Tune in on Tuesday, November 4th at 7 p.m. to get the latest election results with live analysis from our data reporters and our on-the-ground teams. That's Tuesday, November 4th, starting 7 p.m. only here on NTD. Don't miss it. I'm Stephanie Cox, and this is World Watch. President Trump is set to meet with the leaders of the 5 Central Asian nations next week. The summit is scheduled to include the heads of Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau says the president of Uzbekistan will meet with Trump in Washington next week. The president of Kazakhstan says he'll participate in the summit as well. Trump is touring Asia this week, including a meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Thursday. Last month, Trump said Uzbekistan Airways signed a roughly $8 billion deal with U.S.-based Boeing. That's to buy 22 of its Dreamliner aircraft. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas handed over human remains yesterday, but they didn't belong to a missing Israeli hostage. Instead, they were partial remains belonging to a hostage that was killed during Hamas's October 7th attack. Israel said the body was recovered in November of that year by Israeli forces. Netanyahu added that Israel considered the action a violation of the Gaza ceasefire. Hamas said it was complying with the ceasefire, but a lack of equipment was hindering its efforts to identify remains. A man accused of fatally shooting Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has confessed to the murder. The confession comes 3 years after the assassination of Japan's longest-serving premier stunned the nation. Tetsuya Yamagami was arrested at the scene of the shooting in July 2022 after firing at Abe with a homemade gun. The 45-year-old had blamed Abe for promoting the Unification Church. Local media have reported that Yamagami developed a grudge against the religious group after his mother made a donation to it. Up to 17 more hearings are set to take place by the end of the year. The verdict is expected to be handed down on January 21st of next year. And a plane crash in Kenya killed 11 passengers today while en route to Masai Mara National Reserve. Mombasa Air Safari said 8 Hungarian and 2 German passengers were on board. The Kenyan pilot was also killed. The plane crashed in a hilly and forested area about 25 miles from a coastal airstrip. Officials said the aircraft burst into flames, leaving charred wreckage at the scene. Mombasa Air Safari said the pilot failed to communicate upon departure. The airline added that the airport control tower tried to reach him for 30 minutes before the plane was located. Investigators were looking into the cause of the crash. Russia's second-largest oil producer, Lukoil, is selling its international assets. The move is the most consequential action so far by a Russian company in response to Western sanctions. Here are the details.
Russia's second-largest oil producer, Lukoil, announced on Monday it will sell its international assets. That's following sanctions over Ukraine imposed last week by the United States. The planned sale marks the most consequential action yet by a Russian company in the wake of Western sanctions over Russia's war in Ukraine, which started in February 2022. Lukoil said in a statement it has started considering bids from potential purchasers, but did not specify which assets will be sold. On October 22nd, President Donald Trump imposed Ukraine-related sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft, Russia's largest oil companies. A week before that, Britain also targeted Lukoil and Rosneft, as well as 44 shadow fleet tankers with opaque ownership in what it described as a new bid to tighten energy sanctions and choke off Kremlin revenue. Lukoil, headquartered in Moscow, accounts for around 2% of global oil output. Its biggest foreign asset is a 75% stake in Iraq's West Derna 2 oil field, one of the world's largest. The company also owns refineries in Bulgaria and Romania, supplies oil to Hungary, Slovakia, and Turkey, and holds stakes in oil terminals and retail fuel chains in Europe, as well as upstream and downstream projects in Central Asia, Africa, and Latin America.